Okay, so good morning, Sebastian Gosnell. How are you?
Very well. Good morning, Anna. How are you?
Fine. I'm very happy to have you here reading this scene, uh, where we are going to perform the reading of one of the most probably romantic scenes from the script. I'm very happy that you are collaborating with us and taking this moment to read with us. But first, let's comment and introduce yourself. What do you do, who you are, and tell us something about you.
Sure. Yeah, I'm a musician, a professional pianist and singer. I'm half English. I was born in Madrid, but my mother is from London, and my grandparents were from London and Glasgow.
Mhm.
And but I grew up here speaking English, so English is sort of my mother language, my first language. But also I speak Spanish. And I came into music since I was a kid, but I did study filmmaking, screenwriting and direction, production, cinematography over in the United States, where I was living for quite a few years, 5 years. And I worked in the film industry, and I've worked in a couple of films in Spain and one big Hollywood film, which was Moulin Rouge in 2000. So I have a little experience also with reading a script.
Great, yes. Fantastic. That sounds brilliant. And I saw that you also have a YouTube channel and that you are playing some music there in the piano.
Yes,
So music
yes, I
is your hobby or is also part of your
no, I'm a professional musician. So I'm a pianist and a singer, and I've been working almost 30 years as a musician professionally, and so now I'm working the Hotel Palace in Madrid almost every night, and I'm also a teacher, a music teacher.
Wow. So what did you do there are you playing the piano there in the palace? Wow.
Yes,
And can anyone go and watch and hear you there? Or I mean, can I go
yes,
and just one night and hear you? Listen to you?
yes. Well, the hotel is open to the public. I'm in the center court. There's a there's actually a big cupola on top of the room, and I'm there every evening after half past seven. I'm there until 9:30 on weekdays, 8 to 10 on weekends.
Oh, wow, fantastic. So I'm sure I will go one day with some friends, or with my partner and listen to you playing there. It would be fantastic. So thank you. Uh, and another question I wanted to ask you, are you reading this day any book in English? If
Right now?
yeah, or in
Well, yeah,
Spanish, it doesn't matter. What book are you reading these days?
right now. This is the one that I've just started last night
Alchemy, The Alchemy of the Heart. Nice.
by
Michael
Michael Brown.
Brown. Tell us
Yeah.
about it a little bit.
Well, I've just started the introduction, but I've read another book by Michael Brown called The Presence Process. So this is about psychotherapy and let's say self-realization, or uh, it's well, yeah. How would I explain it? It's really has to do with psychology and uh, and a little bit of spirituality, I guess, to some degree.
Nice.
It's not a religious book, but it's a book that combines several ideas.
Let's continue then with the reading. Let's start with the reading. I will introduce the people to this part that says, Interior Joe's room, Kirk House, another winter evening. Dressing for the opera, Joe, a little panicked, stabs, which means like apuñala, no? Or like pinch herself, as she tries to pin a frill on her dress. She notices her ink-stained fingers and searches for her gloves. Joe catches sight of her reflection and yanks off, which means da un tirón, ¿no? Se quita, the silly frill in despair. And frill, by the way, it's in Spanish we say volante. Interior foyer, kick house, winter evening. Frederick Bear waits nervous. Giggling, Minnie and Kitty peek around the corner at the professor. Bear looks elegant in his old world clothes. And this just reminds our people, our audience, that these two, Joe and Bear, Professor Bear, they are actually tutoring these kids in their house. And now we can start with the next part.
Okay. Joe, hurrying down the stairs, catches herself when she sees Bear and descends more gracefully. In her simple dress, Joe is beautiful, but she misinterprets Bear's gaze.
Joe marks, I don't have an opera dress.
Quickly putting on her cloak to cover herself. One side of her cloak gets caught, and Joe turns comically, chasing her tail. Bear calmly places the cloak around her. Frederick Bear, you are perfect. Where we are sitting, we will not be so formal. Interior stage of Opera House, New York, night. Point of view of stage, from slightly overhead. Act 3, Scene 8 of Gounod's Faust, adapted from Goethe's poem. Innocent Marguerite and Faust, an older German man, sing an exquisite love duet. Marguerite, newly in love with Faust, resists his advances. In French or German, Faust is singing, O night of love, radiant sky, O sweet passions, silent bliss, brings heaven into our souls. Backstage. Stage wing, down stage left. In the lurid shadows, stagehands, which means the workers behind the stage, those are the assistants, let's say the stage assistants. Anyway, stagehands prepare the next scene. Haul in ropes, lugging scenery, whispering curses. Here is a separate world where magic is made. Seen through the ropes and pulleys and panels of richly painted canvas scenery is the torch-lit stage and the orchestra below. On stage, the lovers almost kiss, but Marguerite resists, frightened and shy. Forced, cruel.
Marguerite, leave me, though I can hardly bear it.
Forced, Marguerite, you break my heart.
Marguerite sings, beseeching, I'm afraid. And we have said that beseeching is kind of imploring. She's como suplicante, no? We could say.
That's right. Backstage, Mephisto, the devil himself, in ghastly makeup. Ghastly meaning something that is ill, that is bad, that looks bad. We can apply it to different contexts, but in this case, it's makeup. So he's just looking horrid, looking menacing or bad. Yeah. So the devil himself in ghastly makeup and scarlet hose, scarlet being red, probably color, awaits his cue. Hovering behind Joe and Frederick Bear. Hovering meaning something that is above, okay, like maybe floating or flying, who watched the performance from the wing. Jo is riveted, and she's riveted means she's enthralled. She's
Yeah.
well, yeah.
In Spanish, we would say fascinada, no?
That's right. That's fascinating. Yeah, fascinating.
Yeah.
She's fascinated. Nearby, on stage, Faust gently raises Marguerite and sings to her sweetly in French or German. In the dark stage wing, Jo glances at Bear, questioning, "What is happening?" Frederick leans close to whisper, interpreting. Frederick Bear, Faust agrees to leave to protect Marguerite's honor. Takes Jo's hand, draws closer. They will meet in the morning. Entering on cue, Mephisto sweeps past dramatically, startling Jo. The boy, stagehand, sets off an explosion of smoke. Jo coughs and chokes. Bear whispers Mephisto's translation. Frederick Bear. Mephisto is angry. He wanted Faust to seduce her. Professor, you should be sent to school again. Then he makes Faust spy on Marguerite. She thinks she is alone. On stage, Marguerite opens a window to sing a beautiful aria. Enthralled, again, same thing as, what was the other word we say? Riveted.
Yeah.
Yes, it means fascinated.
Yeah.
Enthralled, Jo grips Bear's hand more tightly. His lips soft against her ear. Bear whispers Marguerite's words. Frederick.
Yeah.
He loves me. My heart overflows. The night bird sings, and all nature whispers. He loves you. He loves you. These seem to be Bear's own words. Jo turns her head, and her eyes meet Bear's. Frederick Bear continued, "Oh, how sweet life is. Heaven smiles at me."
Beautiful. So now the last part says, Jo and Bear look at each other, caught in this moment. The rapt moment before a kiss that does not yet come. Faust rushes to take Marguerite in his arms, and Mephistopheles laughs his booming, cynical laugh. The curtain falls. So what we are going to comment here, for example, is a booming, cynical laugh. And I think you told me before that this booming is like very theatrical, very exaggerated, we could say.
You could say, for example, another word similar to booming is that comes with the same root. The BWOOM is bombastic also, for example. Although bombastic maybe doesn't have a double O. But anyway, yes, booming.
I love both words, bombastic and also booming. So we have finished reading the scene. Now we are going to comment the three expressions or three words that, in your opinion, we need to highlight for people that, like me and like the rest of the audience, that are native speakers of Spanish, and this language, English, is their second language. So which words would you highlight for these people?
Well, maybe I would highlight ghastly, meaning something foul, ill, or ugly, or bad tasting. In this case, it's referring to appearance, to makeup. And I also, well, scarlet I find interesting because a scarlet hose, meaning, that's a strange kind of idea, but hose meaning like a tube.
Exactly.
But what I find interesting about scarlet, and I don't know if I'm right about this, meaning scarlet as a red color, it also reminds me of something, let's say, historical in the 20th century, which was the book Gone with the Wind by Margaret. What was the name of the author? Damn.
I don't remember the author right now.
Well, main character is Scarlett, and she's this very passionate character with a very strong personality. If you see the movie, also that was probably one of the biggest movies of the 20th century, Gone with the Wind.
Yes.
And so I think maybe not, maybe I'm wrong, but it's funny that they're referring to a red color. Now we understand there's a red color. This word scarlet, which is also a name. Well, there's a lot of words that are interesting. I like hovering, which means it means like floating above something. It's above something. Hovering meaning maybe moving in circles.
Yeah, like for example, any helicopter, for example, hovering.
Yeah, hovering. Yeah,
Yeah.
or like a vulture is hovering. You know, that's actually happened to me. Vultures hovering above me while I was walking in a desert, and I was like, they're waiting to see if I drop down and it can eat me.
Yes. I also like, especially like the word stagehands.
Stagehands, yes. Well, it's stage meaning, of course, the scene where you work in a theater, and the hand meaning. So, for example, a stagehand also could be drawn similar to giving a hand. If you give someone a hand, you're helping them. So stagehand immediately will convey this meaning that it's someone that is helping on the stage. Yeah, that's a nice word.
And also I would highlight the role that this stagehand worker is having in this scene, because apparently is this moment that is very romantic in the opera and also in the relation between Frederick there and Joe, but suddenly we have this kind of very human, earthy character that is helping with everything that has to happen around this theater or stage, and in Spanish we would call it chamallista.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, this man that is another word that is the hauling ropes, no, like lifting or carrying. No, hauling is carrying, right? Carrying or pulling ropes, and at the same time lugging a scenery, which is like lifting the scenery. So it's a very physical. The physicality of his work impressed me in comparison to this so kind of weightless feeling of the music that is being played, and also the characters themselves that are wrapped in rapture, right, in this moment of love. But then in contrast, this person is they say is whispering curses, right? Because it's kind of difficult. It is difficult to be working also in the theater with so much material to move. And I love this.
Absolutely.
I love that contrast. And I think if a theater play or any opera is well made, they should be showing also this kind of opposites, the lifting sceneries as if nothing, it's hard and difficult. But on the opposite, we need someone with that strength. We need someone with that commitment. We need someone with that power to move things and get dirty in their hands. And I love that.
It's a good life metaphor, actually, in a way. When we go to the theater or the opera, or we go to a concert, we see the nice parts or the light part of all the work that is behind. But a musician has to, for example, also spend many hours practicing, grueling at the piano. But the nice thing about films is that it can show, it can make these metaphors where it juxtaposes two things, and how the world is made of this duality, where we have light and dark, and we have something ethereal and beautiful and poetic, and then the nitty-gritty material part where you have to construct that. So it's quite fascinating. Yeah, it's a good reflection that you made there. Good thought.
Can you also help us with the pronunciation of British the British accent for Friedrich Bär and
Right.
Friedrich Bär. Can you? The American is the second one, and the British is the first, I think. Can you help us with that as well? Can you say it?
Yes, yes. Friedrich. That would be British, Friedrich. And then they would say, they would pronounce Friedrich Bär.
And can you do it now as an American? The one that we have said, okay, let's do it in this way because it's easier for us.
Yeah, okay. So they would say Friedrich Bär. Friedrich Bär, something like that.
Friedrich Bär. Yes. It sounds easier for me to say Friedrich Bär than
well, it's easy.
Bär.
Then Friedrich Bär. Yeah. But the thing, and you will find different approaches, even like I say, in small areas. For example, in New York, also, you might find an educated man that's gone to New York University or Columbia or has gone to one of the Ivy Leagues up in Massachusetts, and he might pronounce very closely like a British word.
Yeah. Beautiful variety of accents and sounds. So as a musician, you also value this treasure of having different accents and ways of speaking. And
oh yes, I mean I find it very interesting, very fascinating. I mean, I learned a lot of English, of course, at home with my mother and my English family in London, although I was in Madrid. But I learned a lot of English through movies. So my father was he loved films, and my mum too. But my father was crazy about it, and so we would rent films actually from a video club that had movies in English, and so I remember learning a lot through movies. And so when I saw the English movies, yes, I had a lot to learn about different vocabulary, words, etc. But I remember watching American movies from New York or California, and it took me a year at least to adapt, to understand what they were talking about. It looked like as if it was a different language, but I did learn a lot. And I find actually that although, I'm English, half English, I actually understand some forms of American English better than I do English slang, for example, because English slang can be very difficult. If I just mention Cockney that I can't imitate. But also certain areas in Great Britain, in England, Northern England, in Ireland, are quite difficult to understand. So I mean, I'm very Americanized, and I still have the English accent, but sometimes I turn into a continental accent. If you remember an actor named Cary Grant, who was one of the biggest stars in filmmaking, he was English. His name was Archibald or something like that. Archibald Leach or something, some strange name like that. And he did soften his English accent. So when he went to America, and so a lot of people, I think it was my mom or my grandmother, were referring to this continental accent, northern Atlantic accent, meaning that someone English had gone to America and softened their accent. And there's a very good joke that is in the movie Some Like It Hot.
Yeah, I love that movie. Yeah,
that great movie, yeah, con Faldas a lo Loco. And of course, watching the movie in English is funny because there's quite a good joke about accents.
Okay.
And so Tony Curtis, the American actor, he worked with Cary Grant, or he knew of Cary Grant. I know he worked with Cary Grant in one movie, and he's one of the musicians from Chicago with Jack Lemmon, and he's pretending to be a millionaire to try and lure Marilyn Monroe.
Yes,
he's trying to woo Marilyn Monroe.
Like he's wearing like a jacket, like a navy jacket, and a hat. Yes.
And he's trying to seduce her. And so to look sophisticated, he takes on a Cary Grant accent.
Okay, wow.
And yes. And so when Jack Lemmon dressed as a girl. This is also funny. Listens to him, he goes like, "Oh, really?" And then when they're talking in the room, he goes like, "You phony, you phony bastard." And he says, "And nobody talks like that," and he makes this very, very funny kind of reference to saying like, you're
Yeah.
trying to be Cary Grant and you're not.
Yeah. I love it.
Very funny.
Yes, I also say to my students these days that we have this Source YouTube channel where people can watch and listen to real people talking in a real context, have interviews. I love interviews where you can see the actors and actresses, like, for example, Emma Thompson, that I admired and I love her job and the way she is and the way she talks, or Sarah Jessica Parker, American accent, and you can see them talking as real people, interacting and having doubts and thinking a little bit before answering the question. So these kind of interactions I prefer to guide my students towards this kind of communicative context than watching series or movies, because sometimes scripts from series and movies are very well written and are fantastic, but are not real in the sense of language. The use of the language is a little bit sophisticated.
Absolutely. There is a lot in filmmaking and theater and all these arts that is used. I think it's how do you say, well, it can be applied, it can be used, but of course I realized when I listened to myself recorded that my language, my spoken language, is not like a stage or film actor, and you always kind of criticize yourself saying, look at, you're not pronouncing the consonants correctly, and you're sort of slurring language and blah blah blah, and you're going into sort of a very incoherent kind of, in terms of phonetics, language. So yes, it's good to listen to everyday conversations. So
yeah, I love it. And also it makes everything more human. And one of the things I also emphasize is the mistake as a tool to observe what is your problem, what is the problem you have with the language, if there is any problem, which I don't think it's a problem. It's just the process of getting better and tuning your voice in that language. So I try to not stigmatize the mistakes that we commit, because this is a never-ending story, especially if it's your second language. But even in your native language, you're still having mistakes, because this is a never-ending story. I always say that. So being bilingual or being plurilingual, that in Spanish, these days we have become a little bit crazy with the becoming a bilingual education and these kind of things. I sometimes criticize this, because language is the first tool to enter and explore culture and explore the mind and explore knowledge. So if you are given two tools at the same time and you have to be excellent in both at the same time, this can have a lot of pressure or give a lot of pressure to our students, because they are sharpening the tool at the same time they are discovering the world with it. And that's very demanding. And I think that is very unfair for new generations. So I try to say, fix one, be good at one, cultivate one very well, explore the world, and then the second one, do it, train yourself with that, explore also with that too, but have only at least one very well cultivated.
well, it's definitely important to have, like, when you're building abilities and crafts and tools, it's always good to get a foundation before you go forward. I talked about this in my music classes. I'm trying to give a tool on the piano. It's like, if you don't work on this first, the second step is going to be difficult. Also, the question I make upon also on languages is that I see that I started with both languages very young, and it wasn't a problem in terms of building them. What it was a crisis of identity.
Mm.
I did not know. I felt English, and it had also maybe to have to do with psychological and emotional issues, or nationalistic. I don't know, political. But I felt English and I felt Spanish, and I felt inclined to having to choose, but I couldn't.
Yeah.
So it was something that was resolved in my adult age, where I realized when I went to America, I said, well, now I feel like a Yankee. I could be American. And so I realized, well, so identity has to do with you choosing,
Yeah, exactly.
with you saying, okay, well, at least in terms of language, nationality is like, you know, and I kind of thought this song, well, I can't remember the name now anyway, but wherever you lay your hat, or wherever I lay my hat, that's my home. So you have to kind of choose.
Yeah.
But I think actually, though, that starting to speak trilingual, plurilingual, there is also an advantage which has to do with the ear. And this I know because of music, that when you listen to certain languages and you try to practice them when you're very young, it does help. It does help. It helps the ear.
Not only with young people, also helps with adulthood. So that's another myth when they say that adults can't learn a second or third language. I also found that it's not because of the age, it's because of the enthusiastic or enthusiast that the person is feeling towards the activity, you know. And so it's more about how open you are to receive, how sensitive and sensible you are with the task that you are going to perform, and how open you are to receive and being corrected as well. The problem with adulthood is maybe because we have the tendency to say, I know, no? So then we don't explore what the unknown, we don't explore our faults, because it's like a shame. Because when you start learning or talking a second or third language, you feel like en pañales again. You can't really express all the knowledge that you have already acquired, and then you feel weak, and you are in a stage, what I call the stage of being in the womb of the mother, like you are only listening. And that's why for me it's so important music and sound, because there is a stage where your language is being developed just by receiving the sound. And that is something even physical that happens. So because you are tuned to the rhythm, you are tuned to the rhymes that happens inside the language. And so you suddenly feel more connected to your inner voice or child than when you are just talking in your mother language that is much more mature, obviously. So it's interesting. In your case, it's a little bit different because you have been wrong. You have been educated in both languages at the same time, and it's so fascinating to see the difference between really bilingual people versus people that are native in one language and then they acquired a second language. It's totally different, I guess, and that's why you probably have also that facility to also other languages, third language maybe, and also music. Definitely music helps. Yes, a lot. Yeah.
Well, yeah, music also opens up, it develops the ear, so it does help. Now, I was also going to mention, maybe lastly, or to finish,
yes,
the importance of how you expose yourself to a language, to learn it. And of course, you know, for me, my trips to England as a kid, which I started going, when I was a baby, my mother, I guess, must have taken me to London, and I don't remember, but I do remember being there with 3-4 years old, and subsequently England and then America a lot. I've been to America many times, and all over the northern continent, and very important, those trips and meeting those people, and having a lot of friends from different parts of the world. It's an invaluable lesson, because obviously a language in some ways starts in the location of the planet. So to be there, you know, it's like if you, I don't know, I imagine someone that likes a certain kind of let's say film or novel, or and they visit the grave of the author, or they go to where the movie was filmed, and so that way you embed yourself in that. Of course, if we can travel, that's wonderful. But if we can't travel, we can find anyway people or experiences or movies or different things that will connect us to the language. And it's passion. I think learning a language is also a passion about learning about other human beings, and wanting to connect with them and see how they live, how they think.
Exactly.
So I think it's quite a beautiful experience to have in life. So it's really lucky that we live through these times where we have information and connection, and even mobility to move around the planet. Because I mean, I'm getting old now, but I'm probably from my family the family member that has traveled the most through the planet, because I have been to very, very distant places. I've been to Antarctica, and then I've been to the Arctic on the north. I've been through all of America. I've been through all the Pacific, and I've traveled and I keep traveling. And it's quite a fascinating planet. And the more I travel, the more I love the planet, and I love people in it.
Absolutely. And it's wonderful. And we can see also that, you know a little bit of astrology yourself, I guess, because I know Begonia probably has told you things. One of the axes is Gemini's Sagittarius, which is the axis of communication. And I always, is a metaphor that I use to say that Gemini's is the language that we use with our neighbors, with our family, with our relatives. Is the language that we use for communicating in things, daily things, right? Closer to you. So we could say the mother language is that. So you need to feel connected through language with the people that you have relationships. Don't create like a barrier of language, no? So we simplify by using some common language that we can use, and so we understand perfectly. But then we have the axis, the other extreme of the axis, which is Sagittarius. Sagittarius is the symbol is a bow with an arrow that explores the world, as you were saying, and it's this passion of it's like Indiana Jones. So you're a little like Indiana Jones. You need to go and explore the world. You need to go and find a new culture because you love it and you want to understand it, and through learning the language to discover that culture. And so we, in this axis of communication, Gemini Sagittarius is where we move, and we all have this in our birth chart. And I don't know where exactly is in your birth chart. Maybe another day you will tell me. But
I have a bit of both. So definitely, yes, those are part of me. Yeah. But well said. Yes. I think we all have a lot of different traits in ourselves, and we can discover what we are. And there is certain things that manifest more in certain people, but even the things that don't manifest, you can work through them, I think. But anyway, it's been a fascinating read. Thank you very much, Anna.
Thank you, Sebastian. It has been a pleasure, and I am looking forward to go in that hotel, wonderful hotel, and listen to you playing that beautiful instrument, which is a piano. And so we are going to finish here. We're going to say goodbye to the people, but don't go. I'll finish talking to you. Okay. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.